I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. I mean, listen, we talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice. Not a game, not a game.
Me. Bam, bam. Me, man.
Not a game.
Slap it like she scored 30.
All right. Welcome back to We Talking About Sports, episode number 4. Thank you all for tuning in again. For everybody that subscribed, everybody who left a comment this past week, we appreciate that support. As we do here at We Talking About Sports, before we get into anything, we like to shoot the breeze a little bit. Ben, how was your week?
My week was good, bro. Full of work. The weekend, I had my mom and my sister come up into town for Mother's Day weekend. Happy belated Mother's Day to any mothers listening.
All right.
Yeah. But we did a little barbecue Friday, Saturday. She left to Dallas to visit my brother, and I invited some of the boys over. We watched the fights, barbecued. Sunday, my mom and sister were back in town, celebrated Mother's Day, and today finally went and got a haircut. Told them to cut it all off, man.
I like it.
Yeah. Got a haircut, went to Pluckers. Here we are. Potting. We're potting.
Yeah. I, for one, have not had a haircut yet during this coronavirus, so I'll be keeping this hat on throughout the whole time. But that's just for the viewer's sake, for all of you guys on YouTube. I don't want you guys to have to see this. But my week was pretty good. A lot of work. I've been working from home throughout this whole time. Traveled down to the valley again to come see my mom and celebrate Mother's Day with her and my brother. So we did that whole thing yesterday, chilled out by the pool. I got back to work today, worked here from home in the valley, and we're potting. Yeah, as Ben said, episode 4, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, bittersweet week for me, but, glad we're here potting. Got my barber lined up for me on Thursday, so I'm going to get a haircut this week finally. Glad to have
Same
that.
Here.
But yeah, let's just open up with some NBA talk. No, you know what? Before we get there, let's do some comments that we had over the weekend.
Yeah.
We'll start with the YouTube. And just acknowledge Ed T. He left 2 fire emojis for us. Appreciate that.
Awesome.
What
Thank
happened
you, sir.
to the UFA? What happened to the UFA before the fire emojis, Eddie?
Bet King came in again. He says Cowboys killed the draft, and signing Andy Dalton cheap is insurance and a bargaining chip. Good business by Jerry Jones.
Yeah, no, they're killing the offseason. The draft, I thought they did well. They did everything that they were supposed to do. They took the best available player in CeeDee Lamb, and then they followed it up and addressed need, and then went ahead and got a cornerback and Trayvon Diggs, who nobody thought was going to be there. So they're killing the draft. Those are just first 2 picks, but they did a great draft all the way through. And then the Andy Dalton thing. I think he might be the best backup quarterback in the league right now for the amount of money that we got him for and the situation that we're bringing him into. I know we alluded a little bit, and I said it's a teeny bargaining chip, but I think that teeny bargaining chip has grown a little bit lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit later with our Cowboys topic, but for sure the Cowboys have been killing it in the offseason, man. They've been doing everything right, like Roland said, drafting best available, and now the only thing left is to execute or actually sign Dak. That's the last little piece of the puzzle. Sign Dak and then execute, win the division, and get into the playoffs.
Yeah. Jaime Garza says, great job, guys. Keep up the good work. Hey, Jaime, we appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you for watching.
This last comment is for Ben, coming in from Generoso Trevino. I think he goes by Gene. And this question is for Ben Diaz. Should Cerrone retire from the sport now that he's lost so many in a row, or do one last fight and try to get an easy win? Really worried he's going to hurt his mental health in the long run with how often he fights and gets hurt.
Yeah, as far as his mental health, I think that's already past the point of no return. I think Cowboy I know I'm in the minority and I had Cowboy going into the card, but I thought Cowboy beat Anthony Pettis. I thought when we heard 30-27 unanimous, I didn't think that Anthony Pettis won all 3 rounds of that fight, no matter who was judging it, except for, I guess, those 3 judges. But when I heard 30-27, I thought it was for Cowboy. He didn't take much damage. I know we alluded to him having a record-breaking 35th, 36 walk to the octagon. So I don't think that he's going to retire. I think that he's going to see 40 UFC appearances, 40 walks into the octagon. They do need to start booking him with lower competition. Maybe competition or booking him against somebody like Diego Sanchez. I know they both used to train at Jackson Wink. They both ended up having beef. When Cowboy left Jackson Wink, Diego Sanchez was taking shots at Cowboy on Twitter and Instagram. And then, several months later, Diego Sanchez ends up leaving Jackson Wink also. So I think that they should book him against somebody like Diego Sanchez, or if not, the competition that they're booking Diego Sanchez with. Have him as a gatekeeper. Obviously, he's not going to have title aspirations at this point. Like Junior said, my cousin, I mean, the dude, his CTE and his brain, it's only getting worse. I think they need to tone down the level of competition that they book him against, but I don't think that he's done. Like I said, I think that he'll see 40 walks to the octagon.
Yeah. Roland, you got anything on that one?
Yeah. Thanks for the comment. I know that was directed at Ben, but Cowboy, I don't think he got dominated in that fight against Pettis. It was a split decision, right? And one of the guys had it at 30-27. One of the judges scored it 3-0, which I thought was kind of crazy. Personally, I had the fight scored 2-1 in favor of Cowboy. I don't think he got credit for some of those takedowns that people thought he might have gotten credit for, and that's because he really didn't do much with it. I think Pettis was able to work his way back up pretty quickly. But, the one thing for me is I don't think Cowboy is done. I think he can still fight, guys like Ben mentioned, like Diego Sanchez, and definitely walk out with some victories on the way out of his career. But I would like to see him take some time off, let himself fully heal. As Gene mentioned, he's concerned about his mental health. Let his mental get a little bit better. Just not being in the rigorous camps month after month, or getting into a fight and then jumping into another camp. I'd like to see him take some time off and let his body rest.
I hear you. All right, next comment is going to be coming in from Mike. And Mike says, appreciate the shout, gents. And then he says, if and when the NBA returns, who are y'all's favorites from each conference and eventual title winners?
If the NBA returns, like in the preseason, I have the Clippers winning it all. I would have the Clippers getting there and playing the Bucks out of the East. I think the Clippers just have too much dog in them. I think that they match up well with the Lakers, with Kawhi and Paul George, and them being able to switch defensively. Patrick Beverly, I think that they match up well with the Rockets. I think they match up well with the Lakers. I think that they would give Luka Doncic fits. I know they probably won't see them in the playoffs, but I'm just rolling through the playoff teams, and I think that the Clippers match up well with everybody. So give me Clippers against Bucks, and give me the Clippers in 5. I think that they frustrate Giannis, make him into a jump shooter, and it doesn't work out. Now let's see if the NBA season comes back and we get to see it.
Yeah, well, I don't think the season's going to come back just based on the way everything's trending. If it were to come back, I know I was talking about the Lakers not being the favorites in the West, so I would go with the Clippers in the West and the Bucks in the East. I think the Bucks were the clearly the best regular season team throughout the year. They finished, I guess, this coronavirus ended season with the best record in the league. And I do think it would give the Clippers some trouble in the front court. I do think they have some size issues. The Clippers do, being their best big man is Zubac, and then they throw in Montrezl Harrell, who's more of a new age 4, who's added a lot to his game, by the way. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. I really do like Montrezl Harrell. Doesn't get enough credit for his offensive game. But I do think that's more of a 7-game series, and I would be inclined to go with the Clippers just because they do have the robot and the Terminator, and I think he would ultimately be the tipping factor.
All right. And our last comment, which will actually lead us into our NBA talk, it comes from Leo, and he says, what are y'all thoughts on the new D-League portal program? Already seen several 5-star recruits skip college and join the D-League. They offer a 6-figure salary, NBA training staffs, and a full scholarship as well. Do y'all see more top players going this route?
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to keep on seeing a consistent amount of players going. I don't think it's going to be to the point where it's at the true detriment of the NCAA, because I still think them as an organization can find some ways to combat this. But Man, I love this NBA Pathways program. I like what they're doing. I wish they would have done this sooner. I do like the fact that they're not going to be on an NBA G League team. They're actually going to be on a G League select team where they're playing maybe 12 to 13 games a season against, other G League teams or maybe some other national teams or some NBA. I forget what they call it, but it's the across borders teams that they have. Like they'll have like an all African team or an all Chinese team for developmental players. So I do like that, and it gives them a reason to stay in states. I hate seeing top prospects each year have to go and play in Spain or play in Australia like LaMelo did because they wanted to make some extra change when they were going through high school or maybe even in college. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, I don't think that we'll ever see a player with as much hype behind him as Zion Williamson play college basketball ever again. Especially with what came out as recently as today. I saw that his previous marketing agent is now suing him they want him to admit that Nike, Adidas, and somebody from Duke gave his family money for him to attend Duke. It's just a mess, man. Obviously, these guys can't go in out of high school anymore. And this G League Pathways program, where the number one ranked player in green is making $500,000 to play 10 or 12 games, get professional training, be fed the best food. He doesn't have to travel like these G League players do. He doesn't have to play that 62-game schedule that I believe the G League plays. It's ridiculous. Obviously, it'll be just maybe the top 5-7 players in each draft class. I know Roland had mentioned off air that the 1 and the 2 player who both signed with G League teams, that same G League team, were supposed to go to UCLA. So that's a huge blow to UCLA. UCLA has been waiting to be back on the map. I know Lonzo kind of had them there, but they've fallen off. So that's a huge a huge
blow to the recruiting class. Yeah,
sure.
I agree.
Teams like the Blue Bloods, obviously, they're the ones that stack up on these top 7, top 5 players. Maybe we're going to see more guys like Psycho T. They can't go straight from high school. This is the next best thing, man. I mean, $500,000 and I have a foot in the NBA. I just have to stay healthy. I don't think that any top players will be going to college anymore, having to deal with classes, exams, living in a dorm. I mean, you're living the life. You're getting ready to become a pro. So,
and I think, we are going to see a trend of players going there, but I still do think the Dukes of the world, the Kansases of the world, the Kentuckys of the world, they're still going to get their top prospects. They're still going to find those guys that want to go to college, want to play on Big Monday. There's no way you can replace, playing 7:30 on primetime on ESPN against a Duke North Carolina matchup with millions of people watching. I mean, that's partly why Zion Williamson was a household name that he was going into the draft, was because he did go to Duke. So my question to you would be, that's my opinion. Do you think Zion or maybe another player in the past would have been big of a star as they truly were or was at that time had they not gone the college route? Because I think that played a big part in making him the big media monster that he is now.
It did play a big part as far as ESPN, but I mean, it's been over a decade, and we saw LeBron come up and be just as Showtime as Zion was. His high school games on ESPN without going to college, back when you could go straight from high school. So if we can go a decade back, which I would say was the last guy that had the hype, Zion is the first guy to have the hype since LeBron. So we've waited a while. Obviously, he was forced to go to college instead of going overseas. I don't think that was ever an option for Zion. But if this Pathways program was an option for Zion, now with these allegations of him taking money, the dude would have gone and played for $500,000 They might have hit $1 million for Zion.
Well, he probably already raked that much in if there's this investigation that's going in with Duke. Because, I mean, the fact of the matter is these guys, they get paid all the time. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, they caught Sean Miller on wiretap saying that he paid him $125K to go to Arizona. So these guys are still going to do that. The NCAA still has, some moves to make. But the last thing on this that I'm interested to see moving forward is how big of a disparity grows between the mid majors and the Kentuckys and the Blue Bloods of the world, because if the NCAA is able to let these players build off of their likeness, why is a top player going to want to go in and go to Dayton and try and build off of their likeness when they can go to Kentucky where it's already all built in for them? So I think it might create a more of a recruiting disadvantage for the mid majors if players are able to make money off of their likeness in the NCAA going forward. So that's just something to keep track of.
Very interesting. As well, we believe the NBA season coming to an end here. Would you want your team to start up with CP3 next year via trade? Do you think he's still that guy that can win a title for your team?
I'll start just because he used to be on the Rockets, so obviously I wouldn't want him back, and there's no way of him coming back. But I know my brother Leo, who just led us into our NBA talks with the comment, had told me that after the Rockets promised CP3 that contract the year that he got injured, we paid him up almost 42 million a year, and he said that contract would be untradeable with his age. And thank God the Thunder, wanting to be of good faith to Russell Westbrook, they went ahead and traded, Russell Westbrook for CP3. And yeah, we had to throw in a couple of pigs due to CP3's age and how much he was getting paid. But I don't think any of us expected, and I don't think CP3 expected to be on Oklahoma City's roster when the season started. And to our surprise, they're a playoff team. And they're like a 5, a 6 seed. CP3, man, when he left the Hornets, he went to the Clippers, turned them into Lob City. They became contenders, made a couple of runs. Then he got traded to the Rockets. There's only one ball, Howard Harden and CP3 going to coexist. And in their first year, they won 7 games with the Warriors. After that, obviously, things didn't go the Rockets' way, and they got rid of him to the Thunder. And like I said, we didn't expect anything from the Thunder. We expected them to buy him out or for him to be traded to a contender. And here are the Thunder in contention. Not necessarily in contention, but playoff contention. Once you're in the playoffs, hey, it's anything goes. You know what I mean? You just got to win that 7-game series. So you play the season to be in the playoffs and have a chance at the playoffs. And I don't think any of us saw the Thunder as being a playoff team this year, let alone a 5 or a 6 seed. So CP3 definitely is still paving the way wherever he goes.
All right.
Yeah, I have a big smile on my face. This is one of my favorite players in the NBA. Point guard, as I like to call him, and a lot of people like to call him. He still is that point guard until somebody tells me otherwise or proves otherwise, because he wins wherever he goes, and he changes, the face of your franchise. Or not so much in the Rockets instance, because they were already pretty established and they were just adding him as an extra piece. But he's a winner. Yeah, he's never won a championship, but he's never been on a bad team. He's always, helped grow his team, and he's still that wily veteran. He's that guy that you're going to want to bring in and help, not necessarily whip into shape, but get your young guys in a winning mentality. Show them how to practice hard. Show them how to do the off season. Lead by example. He's one of those guys, and sure, that leadership style doesn't always work. He rubbed some guys the wrong way in previous stops. I think him and DeAndre Jordan came to tears that one time. That one weird free agency where Mark Cuban was knocking on his door and stuff like that, and they were all locked in the room or whatever, or locked in DeAndre Jordan's house. So that doesn't always work with everybody, but CP3, the track record speaks for itself. And I know that the talk or the trade talks that got this spurred was the Knicks thinking about bringing him in. I think that might be too steep of an ask for CP3, but I wouldn't mind seeing him play in Madison Square Garden, point guard in the Mecca. That'd be pretty cool. And he might not necessarily turn the franchise around, but maybe he'll instill a winning mentality or the right way to do things.
He definitely sets the culture, and he gives your franchise an identity, and consistency is what he does. So
you just say he's a leader. So it is what it is. He's a leader.
Yeah, exactly. He leads.
Yeah. All right, so we're all on Twitter, and I don't know about y'all, but this week I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed, and I see at Steph Curry, I effed your wife. Did y'all catch that Giannis debacle?
Terrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. I just want to know, how bad his password was. It had to have been like password backwards or Greek Freak 34 or something. That's horrible.
Password MVP.
Man, some of the things that got said were crazy.
Not only did he go at Curry, but he goes at Curry, and then in a later tweet, obviously I'm saying he because it's his account. He was hacked. He was hacked is the word on the streets. I don't believe it because finally he's taking shots at other people besides Harden, Giannis. But he took shots at LeBron. He said he was going to the Warriors. He took shots at Kobe. He took shots at the Bucks. I mean, it was wild. His account took shot at all these people. But yeah, his brother, who's on the Lakers, tweeted and cleared it up, said he was hacked. It's pretty wild, man, how these athletes are getting hacked. I know a couple months ago, Kamaru Usman had been tweeting some wild stuff to Conor McGregor about his kids. And Usman's a very family guy. He's always posting his daughter. It just didn't make sense. They weren't in the same weight division. They leaked. Even Giannis, they leaked bank accounts. Emails, cell phone numbers. It's a mess.
Supermax hasn't hit yet. It's bad if he got that Supermax.
Right, with the Supermax, he would have had the double check mark.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, that was. Someone who's been pretty vocal about the NBA's return is Mark Cuban, and this week he actually questioned the wisdom of the NBA return. Now, his thing was that with certain facilities reopening, it's not fair for certain cities, like New York and places where the virus is a little more prevalent than other cities who are completely open, don't have that many viruses or cases. What are y'all thoughts on that? Is he correct to say that it's not wise to reopen here?
Yeah, he's just using common sense. I really think that's all that is. And, just thinking about it, it's completely unfair that some cities or some teams in certain cities that aren't as badly as affected are able to go ahead and get some practice in or shoot-arounds or whatever that may be. It's more than what other teams are getting, and that's simply creating a competitive disadvantage. So if you want to think about restarting the season, what about all these teams that are getting a head start? Some of them are playoff teams. I don't think any of them were. I think it was like the Cavaliers and the Trailblazers were two of the teams that I saw. Maybe you guys know the other two, but it's not fair to the other teams that can't get into the practice facilities, and it doesn't make much sense to keep on doing this stuff to try and salvage whatever you have left of a season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know New York is not only the Mecca, but it's also the Mecca of the coronavirus because it's been the biggest hotspot, and the Brooklyn Nets are there. So, I mean, I know the Brooklyn Nets, I believe, were the 8th seed. They would have the first round matchup against the Bucks. Listen, if this thing gets pushed off and they do restart the season, who says KD doesn't come back in late August?
I think they already said.
They said no?
Yeah, they said no. They said they're going to save him.
Kyrie? Maybe we see Kyrie against Giannis. I don't know. I know that we don't think the season's going to continue, but it's obviously unfair to open it up. The Rockets were supposed to open up, and I know they had to move it back a couple days, so it just doesn't make sense. Like Roland said, for some teams to have a disadvantage and others to have an advantage as far as getting the workouts in. The off season starts at the same day for everybody. The season starts the same day for everybody. So I don't see how this is. Let them get back into shape for a new season, maybe in October. But it doesn't seem fair. Mark Cuban always seems to be ahead of the curve. He's one of the more outspoken and proactive owners. And I mean, he's losing money if the season doesn't continue. Yeah. But he still feels that it's a good idea. So that should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. All this is pretty hard to hear as a Lakers fan, but I mean, it is the truth.
For sure.
All right, for this week in the NFL, we're going to hit some quick hitters. To start with, guys, Joe Tessitore and Booger McFarland are out on Monday Night Football. What's your instant feeling about Booger being out? Are you happy? You're indifferent? What do y'all think?
You can listen to Monday Night Football with the volume on again. Happy.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy too. I don't really care for Tessitore, but no more Booger Mobile, man. That means the Booger Mobile's done. It was,
Yeah,
I believe, a one and done season for the Booger Mobile and blocking everybody's seat that bought front row in that area.
Horrible idea.
Yeah, so
Horrible
look,
idea.
no more Witten and no more Booger. Monday Night Football might be back, like Roland said. We no longer will be listening to it on mute, depending on who they put on there. Obviously, they didn't get Tony Romo in that bidding war with CBS, but it'll be interesting to see who fills in with that Monday Night crew.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I would like to see, like, I know Booger was a player, but I would like to see another player, just somebody with more character. Randy Moss, I don't know if he's ever done like color work like that or play-by-play, but he wouldn't be a bad.
That's a good one.
Now, by any chance, do you think anybody from the college rank should step up? Like a Kirk Herbstreit kind of guy. I mean, I love the way he calls Saturdays.
Oh, I love Kirk Herbstreit too, but I think his gig is too sweet.
For sure. He loves it too much. He's too knowledgeable. I mean, not that he wouldn't know NFL, obviously, if that was his job line, but he loves traveling around like that to the campuses. And
it's a good gig.
It's a great gig, man. And the tradition of it, it's a good gig.
I just want somebody the quality of Herbstreit, at least.
Peyton Manning. Let's go.
Hey, Peyton's place is not bad. I mean, that could be a thing.
That's true. They could probably. I could see that, man. I could see that. That's
him versus Romo for the best commentator.
Right.
That would be good.
Who's gonna dissect what the other team first, right? From the booth. From the booth.
Who's gonna be more accurate? That's funny.
All right. This week, Kirk Cousins told Dak, "Do not be afraid of the tag." And I believe the reason why he said that is because he wasn't afraid of the tag initially, right? He took that tag and it paid off for him. Roland, what are your thoughts as a Cowboy fan? Was it an ex-Redskin telling a Cowboy that?
I thought it was insightful, and I thought it was from a good place. I don't think he was saying it to be, lead him in the wrong direction or anything. I think that's one player's opinion. It might have worked for Kirk, but who knows if it's going to work for Dak. You're still taking that risk of playing on that short-term contract and potentially getting injured or having a year that doesn't help your case, right? You might have an off year in that franchise tag year and then give more credence to why the team wasn't wanting to pay you on the long term. So I think it's risky, but I definitely see why he's telling Dak, hey, if you take this tag and you do good, or you play kind of like how you played last year, throwing almost 5,000 yards, you're going to find yourself in a situation where if they don't pay you, somebody else definitely will pay you in the open market next year.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually surprised to hear that he said don't be afraid of the tag, because usually you see players not for the tag and wanting that long-term deal. Like Roland said, for Kirk Cousins, I mean, it worked out for him, and he had a lot less to work with than what Dak has to work with. So them drafting CeeDee Lamb and getting him another weapon definitely will help him, in boosting his stats. I think that he should just sign the tenure. Obviously, you're not going to get a deal worked out with the Cowboys this year. Now, if they give you what you want before you're a free agent, if not, like Roland said, other teams are going to pay, man. There's always teams in the market for a quarterback every offseason. New teams, sometimes the same teams. But if the Jags aren't bad enough and can't get sunshine from Clemson, who says that they don't go pay Dak? You know what I mean? So somebody will pay Dak. Now, like I said, I was surprised hearing Kirk Cousins say that, because usually players are not for the tag and they'll sit out rather than play on the tag. Usually it's more for defensive players who are more injury prone. Dak is known for having one of the better offensive lines in the NFL, better offenses in the NFL. So the tag might be a good thing for him, man. I mean, he gets a pretty high average value as a quarterback as far as pay.
Yep.
Tag is pretty high, and he's got a good offense to work with. Go ball out again, and somebody's going to pay up, man. Somebody's going to pay up.
All right. Well, just to keep it on Dak, this week, Stephen Jones said, Super Bowl winning teams do not pay their quarterback the max. Now, I believe he said that out of analytics perspective, but he also has said that he has been trying to get a deal done for Dak. So, what's your comments? Is Stephen Jones already looking to the future of saying, "Hey, we're just going to move on after the season," or am I looking too far ahead into this comment?
I think it's a media play. He's putting a little something out of the media, and that way the majority of fans are going to hear that and be like, Dak, we can't pay you and still win. Sign the deal. and it's going to, flip some guys to the Cowboy side and, start chirping in Dak's ear maybe. I thought that was a little play. I think he makes sense in what he says. I pulled up a nice little stat. It dates from 1993 to 2017, or 1994 to 2017, but the highest percentage of the cap that's allotted to a quarterback for a Super Bowl winning team in those years is about 13%, and that was Steve Young in 1994. He was 13% of the Niners cap when they won, and most recently Peyton Manning won at 11.6% of the cap. So you can get it done. You just have to be smart about it. And then also the Cowboys have already paid the majority of their other primary players. So I think they can afford to pay Dak. They're just playing hardball to the very last second on this one for whatever reason. So yeah, I think it's possible. You just got to be smart about it, which I think the Cowboys have already, like I said, solidified their team contract-wise for the foreseeable future. So pay Dak. I think you run the risk of giving too much money to a running back. We've talked about the past couple of episodes that you don't need a $20 million a year, $12 to $15 million a year running back in the backfield. You can get it done with Damian Williams on his rookie contract or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's the bigger risk that you run, is giving a lot of money to your running back.
Yeah, for me, it's two things. As soon as Dalton didn't last but 24 hours on the free agency market. Last episode, I said that it was a little bit more leverage for the Cowboys because of the accomplishments that Andy Dalton has had in the NFL with the 120 starts, being in the playoffs, having a winning record. Now, we've mentioned previously on the podcast how these teams are trying to win Super Bowls with quarterbacks on their rookie contracts. Patrick Mahomes, obviously the Ravens got 1 or 2 more years with Jackson on his rookie year. The Texans have this year with Watson left on his rookie deal. But the quarterback's going to be the highest paid player, like Roland said, as far as a percentage of the cap. And if you're paying your quarterback top money, you're paying your running back top money, you're paying top wide receiver money. I mean, the Cowboys just seem to be paying top money everywhere. And I think that they feel that with Andy Dalton, they could win as many games as they can with Dak. I really do feel that. So I think that the Andy Dalton signing, and as fast as it happened, was a sign to me that the Cowboys feel that that's as good and as viable as a backup as there is in the NFL. So I think that Dak is on the hot seat, I would say, this season. Now, he does have all the weapons. Like we said, they drafted him another wide receiver. But Dak is on the hot seat, man. If the Cowboys don't win the division, if the Cowboys don't get to the second round, I don't see the Cowboys signing Dak to a long-term deal. I could see them signing Andy Dalton to a shorter-term deal and looking somewhere else, because if Dak can't get you to the second round this year or win the division, obviously you couldn't win the division last year as battered as the Eagles were. But if he can't do that, then he's just not your guy, and there's no reason to pay him because he's not going to win you that Super Bowl. If you want to stay mediocre in the hunt for the division, maybe playoffs, maybe not, or if you really want the Super Bowl, you just got to scratch it and go elsewhere. Roll with Dalton because you can win as much as you would with Dak for 3 times less to pay. So that's the route I think the Cowboys are taking. Dak's on the hot seat.
I think that I said something to that last week where I thought that Dalton might, keep them going at maybe the same pace or a little lesser than if it were Dak. But it's tough for me when you have a third or fourth year player like Dak and all that potential that is still there waiting to be tapped into. And Dalton on the other end is kind of looking for a second breath in the NFL, which I think if given the opportunity, he could potentially have that. But man, it's just running that risk of letting Dak walk and then see him turn into this Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't know if that's in his cards, but you always run that risk with these things. So definitely something to monitor. I do think it would behoove Dak to sign the tag and ball out and play. Don't sit out, because I think if he sits out, the Cowboys are going to call his bluff and be like, okay, you can sit out. We're rolling with Dalton. Let's go from there.
The other thing with Dalton is, though, his whole career was in Cincinnati, which is as mediocre as a franchise as you get. He played under Marvin Lewis just about his whole career, bro. And he made do with what he had in Cincinnati. So maybe Andy Dalton just needs a change of scenery and obviously an upgraded offense, considering the weapons the Cowboys have compared to Cincinnati. So the worst thing Dak could do is sit out. He might get paid by somebody next year, but not as much as if he played. Obviously, he's going to be the starter. Be the starter, and you're going to get paid, whether it's by the Cowboys or by somebody else. But if he were to sit out, I think the Cowboys are fine throwing Andy Dalton in there. I wouldn't say that the odds for the division change much with that. He's very viable, and some guys just need to change the scenery.
So let me ask this before we move off Dak, because I just thought about this. I think there's a similar situation. I don't know what year it was, but I know Emmitt Smith. He was in a similar situation. He wanted a new contract, and he's like, you know what, screw you guys, I'm sitting out. So the Cowboys called his bluff, and they played the first 4 games without Emmitt. And I think they went like 2-2, and they're like, shit, okay, we need to bring this guy back. So they gave him his money. So what if Dak decides to sit, and then the Cowboys have a bad start to the season? Do you think maybe they'd pay him then, or can they not pay him past that point? I don't know, but I think that'd be interesting. What if they get off to like a 1-3 start with Dalton?
There's a deadline to get the deal done, and I believe it's sometime in early July. So I know after that there would be no until the season started. They couldn't start working on a new deal. So.
Oh, okay, there you go. So then, yeah.
I mean, Zeke threatened sitting out for. Did he sit out a couple of games, or they got his deal done like right before the season started? Didn't they?
Got his deal done. They got his deal done at the last second. I think he missed a lot of training camp.
He missed the preseason.
Yeah, so Zeke played that game with him, and maybe Dak is like, hey, I'm going to follow suit. Zeke played the game, and he ended up getting paid right before the season started. They didn't risk going into the season without Zeke, so he was prepared to sit out too. It's risky, especially for the roster that they have now and how the division is pretty much a 2-team race. Like right now is when you should have your shit together. If you're the Dallas Cowboys with all the weapons you have, and it just so happens that your most important position is a question mark because he hasn't signed the tag, and you don't know if he's your quarterback of the future. So it's going to be very telling. We'll see how it plays out.
Either way, Daxon, he's going to get paid one way or the other. So go get your money, man.
Someone's going to pay him. All right, let's keep it in NFC and talk about another quarterback. The Bears GM, Ryan Pace, he said, we still believe in Trubisky despite declining his 5th-year option. He says this is not an indication of us giving up on him. What's your take?
Wow. Nice man. He's talking nice to the press. I think he's trying to keep that locker room together, trying to salvage whatever confidence Mitch Trubisky has right now. So maybe he can have a full-fledged battle in the preseason. Because I just don't think you bring in Nick Foles and not at least have a quarterback competition. I mean, they're talking about pushing Trubisky and trying to motivate him. No, I mean, it's going to be quarterback competition. If you don't beat out Nick Foles, you're going to be on the bench. While Ryan Pace said that, I don't put too much credence in it. I still think it's going to be a quarterback battle in the preseason to see who starts the season for the Bears.
Yeah, as far as giving up, I mean, like Roland said, it's a QB competition. If they had given up on him, I think they would have just named Foles the starter. Now, sure. like Roland, when they got Foles, I thought, damn, it's over for him because Foles got that 4-year, $88 million deal with the Jags. He only played a game and got hurt. This was the 2nd year of that deal, and he got traded. The Bears traded a 5th-round pick for him. Then I was looking up some notes for the podcast, and the Bears actually reconstructed his deal after the trade. So now he's got 3 years, $24 million, but $21 million of that is guaranteed. So essentially, he's getting paid $8 million a year. Now, that's decent backup money, right? It's not even $10 million. So then it kind of made me think, okay, then maybe it's not over for Mitch Trubisky, but I think it's definitely a QB competition. I know that offensive coordinator or the head coach has history with Nick Foles. So I think after training camp and up to the season, for sure I think Foles can beat him out for the spot. Yeah. And it would be cheap. I think both guys are on cheap because Trubisky's still on his rookie deal. Foles is making $8 million at quarterback. Now the thing is that team, as far as weapons, I like their tight end, Trey Burton. He's always hurt. Their receivers. Not there
anymore.
Oh, he's not.
I don't think so. I think they dropped him.
Even their receivers, they really don't have that number one guy. They've got a bunch of speedsters at running back. Yeah, but he's not a legit number one. At running back, they got the young kid Montgomery. So that offense definitely needs a quarterback to lead them. We've seen that it's not Mitch Trubisky. 23 and 18 record as a starter for Trubisky in 41 games. And remember when you brought up that redraft last episode? Now, that was Mitch Trubisky's draft. I looked up what the Bears gave up to trade from number 3 to number 2. 1 pick. they gave up the number 3 pick, the number 67 pick, the number 111 pick, and a 2018 third rounder. So they gave up 4 picks to move up 1 spot with the 49ers. When if the 49ers take Mitch Trubisky, you take Mahomes or Watson, and you're good. So the Bears are in a tricky situation. Here they are adding another quarterback again. It seems like every couple of years the Bears add whether it's a backup or just a new quarterback. I think that Foles is going to be the starter week 1. I wouldn't doubt he gets hurt sometime during the season, and Trubisky gets to play as well. But I think that this will be the last year Trubisky's in Chicago for sure.
Yeah, I don't think Nagy wants to go down with Trubisky either. As the head coach, he doesn't want to tie his career to Mitch Trubisky. So,
for sure.
All right. Moving over to the AFC, keeping in quarterback talk, the Jaguars signed Mike Glennon. That's another backup quarterback position that's been taken up. Is there going to be any room for Cam to even sign someone as a backup at this point?
Yeah, I think this topic comes up just because of the Cam. It's not really that we're focusing in on Mike Glennon.
It's more.
It's just the Jaguars, right? Is who brought him. Yeah. So the Jaguars was another team that we had linked to maybe Cam could go there because they have Minshew. They might be open to a quarterback competition. There goes the backup quarterback for the Jags. I saw it. I was at Pluckers today, and I saw that Cam turned 31 today. 31, bro. Young. Look at the age Breeze. I mean, this when guys are supposed to be in their prime. Dude can't find a job. It's starting to look like he's not going to find a job. It's sad. It's sad seeing Mike Glennon signed as a backup quarterback prior to Cam Newton, when Cam Newton has come out and publicly said, I am open to being a backup quarterback. I had compared him to Carmelo and said it seemed like it would take him a while to get used to or accept that role, to find his spot in the league. And a week later, he comes out and says, hey, all right, I'll earn my spot. I'm cool with being a backup. And Mike Glennon gets signed? Bro, get out of here. Mike Glennon's been around the damn league and hasn't done a thing. So it's ridiculous. It's starting to look like he might be blackballed for whatever weird-ass reason. But I'm leaning to Cam Newton might not be signed by the time the NFL season starts.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he's going to be on a team when the season starts. I came out and said that I don't think he should take a backup role because I don't think he's that kind of a guy. Even though he said that he would be open to it, he still has way too much talent. As Ben said, he's 31 years old, still potentially tapping into his prime as a quarterback. Because that's still very, very young for a quarterback, 31 years old. Man, it's tough. I know Ben was talking about Mike Glennon. He hasn't really done crap, but I think that way it kind of shores up Minshew. Hey, it's your job. We got Glennon here as a backup for you. Go ahead and win us some football games. But on the flip side, instead of bringing in Cam, man, it's not looking good for him. It's looking pretty grim as far as the backup job still available in the NFL. And it looks like the Patriots each day are getting more and more comfortable with Jared Stidham. So I don't think he's going to end up in New England as much as I'd like to see him just take a 1-year deal and be like, hey, Bill, let me play for you and see if we can win a championship. But I don't think that's going to happen. So unfortunate, but I do think he's going to be a starter sometime in the future. Maybe not this season, but he will be a starting quarterback once he proves that he's fully healthy and capable of leading a team.
And what's crazy is I see him, obviously he's okay with being a backup, but don't think he's okay with being a backup and making Jameis Winston money either, bro.
Yeah.
That's the
exactly.
He's been to a Super Bowl.
If he's going to be a backup, he's going to be one of the higher paid backups in the NFL, and that's if they give him the job. That might be playing into why they don't give him the job, because they know that it might take $8-9 million a year to have Cam as your backup quarterback, because he's not signing for that $1.52 million that Jameis Winston signed for.
And if you bring in Cam, you as a backup, you have to have a very, very, very solidified quarterback for that quarterback not to think, oh shit, is this guy, having to look over my shoulder and play. That's gonna create locker room problems no matter what Cam says or what. If you bring him in, you're paying him that money that Ben said that he's gonna require, which he probably will because of his stature in the league and what he's done, MVP, been to the Super Bowl, blah blah blah. But if you bring him in, that whoever that quarterback is better be a Brady or a Breeze, which you can't do that anymore. Breeze already has his backup, but better be one of those guys that's not threatened by having somebody take their job. That's why I thought bringing him with Jacksonville, have that competition, or maybe even Chicago, but they went the Nick Foles route pretty quick. So, yeah, unfortunate for Cam.
I would say Detroit or Washington is that. Like, honestly, that's all I could.
Spots.
Yeah, that's the last I could come up with.
Yeah, I follow Cam on Instagram, and man, he's putting in the work.
Yeah.
I want to see him somewhere.
It's hard to read his captions.
I don't read them, especially all the ones and all that extra baloney he
I wonder
has.
how long it takes him to type those out, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. All right, this week, Harbaugh, the Michigan head coach, said that there should be a draft rule change. He said we should allow players who don't get drafted back into college. What do you think about that? Should there be some kind of amendment as far as that just applies to the people who go out early only, or?
Yeah, I think that would be another way that, I know we're not talking basketball right now, that'd be another way college basketball would help their case in attracting players and retaining prospects, is allowing them to go back to school if the draft doesn't work out. Because how many times do you hear about an underclassman, or in the NFL's case, a redshirt sophomore or a junior leaving on bad advice and then not getting drafted, or falling in the draft process and not ending up where they thought they were going to be, or going undrafted all completely because they got really bad advice from whoever is in their circle. So I think that would be great. It's just protecting these players, man. Like you can't just kick them out and be like, hey, you're done, go away. We don't want you anymore.
You made one bad choice and that's it.
Yeah, no, you can't do that to these guys. Maybe I'm being a little too sensitive or whatever, but no, just it's the obvious and right thing to do. Give them the option to come back.
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be a bargaining chip that they're going to have to bust out due to what's going on. For sure, and especially with the NBA, I mean, it's only 2 rounds.
Yeah.
It's only 2 rounds. A lot of these guys don't want to go play overseas, but they're coming out, after on their junior year. Let them come back. It's going to have to be one of the things that they, like I said, that they bust out something out of their sleeve. That's a great option. Obviously, with NFL, there's a lot more rounds. But regardless, with any collegiate athlete, if they don't get drafted, what's the harm of letting them come back? I mean, they're not pro players. They had the draft. They decided, you know what, these guys just aren't ready to be pros. What's the problem with letting them go back and finish out whatever their eligibility is in college? We're not saying restart it or whatever it may be, but let them finish out their eligibility. Maybe now get their education and their diploma, and not have to go back and finish off their bachelor's or whatever it may be as pro athletes. So I think Harbaugh's onto something. Yeah. I'm 100% behind that, and it's a great idea. I think the NCAA is going to have to use that as a bargaining chip.
I think we all have a player that comes to mind where this situation has already applied, that we could think, man, he really could have benefited of just coming back for another year. For me, the first one that comes to mind is the Texas wide receiver, little Jordan Humphrey. He went out last year. I think he thought he was going to be a 5th or 6th. Ends up going undrafted. Ends up with the Saints, but he could have really benefited one more year in college.
Really give him that option. Just do the right thing.
That's a great comparison, Justin. I mean, it's tough to say if he would have wanted to come back to college after, going to the Saints and drafted, because that is one of the more prominent teams in the league, and they need receivers. You're a receiver. You just got to kind of have what it takes. But yeah, that's interesting because he was Texas's best wide receiver last year, but the year that he went out, yeah, he definitely played better than Johnson that year, which is why he decided to go out. So that's interesting with that comparison, or that play, that specific play.
Yeah. All right. Well, this week the NFL on Thursday, this past Thursday, even the NFL Network, they covered it. They had like a 3-hour special where they released the schedule. And with this release, there's been talks of having reopening with some fans in the stands, not at a full attendance. I'm just curious, would you guys go to a game with a limited attendance?
Yeah, tickets weren't too crazy. I'd go for sure. I mean, if there's a $65,000 seat stadium, and they're only letting 15,000 people in. That was one of the examples I saw for the Miami Dolphins. They actually have plans of allowing 15,000 people in their stadium upon week 1 of the regular season. I think I'd have some level of comfort in going there, knowing that they're taking all the proper precautions to enforce social distancing amongst the fans. Now, I'd be a little scared to see how they handle like leaving the stadium and all that as you're bunching the aisles to get out of the game. But I would go for sure. I as long as it's like that and the prices aren't too crazy, I think I'd for sure try and go.
Yeah, I think I try to go to one Texans game a year. We lock in one game and we go all out. We tailgate. We gather up 6-7 people. We do the whole thing, and I just don't feel like we'd be able to get the full experience with these circumstances. So I think I wouldn't go personally.
Not this year.
I like chest bumping the random dude sitting in front of me and high fiving the senior citizens behind me. You know, everybody that's going for the Texans, because we've been tailgating. You know, we've been doing it all, and it would. I don't know, man. The atmosphere just wouldn't be the same. I mean, traffic and parking would be a lot better.
Yeah.
I'm with that. But I'm there for the experience. I want the total package. I get pretty intense when I go to games. I get my money's worth. So I think I would just sit out, watch from home, turn the pit on, you know, put the pit to good use, and I'll sit this season out as far as attending games.
Yeah. Now, like Roland said, you got a 15,000 seats filled. Does that affect home field advantage? Is 15,000 seats enough to be, hey, this is still home field advantage? We got the fans on our side.
I think home field advantage is out the window this year, other than like weather and just familiarity with that stadium. Maybe I don't know how loud it can get, or if they're even going to get up to 15,000 fans. What if fans don't want to go? That's still yet to be seen. Although I do think NFL fans, just the type of person that might be an NFL fan, I think they might be inclined to go to these games. Other than, like Ben said, the people who look for the tailgates and stuff, but there's some diehard people who just want to go and see their team and they don't give a crap. So I think there'll still be people who go, but home field advantage is definitely going to take a hit this year.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what Vegas does, man, with their brand new stadium opening up. They obviously need revenue. I would think that they're going to be one of the stadiums letting in a little bit of the higher attendance. Whether I don't know if the baseline is going to be a hard 15,000 people, or is just depending on how many seats. But you would think that Vegas, the Raiders, they're going to need some fans in there. As far as revenue goes and all the money that they put into there, not making anything in their first year of being there would. I don't see it happening. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So the only team that's going to have home field advantage this season will be the Falcons, because they're going to be pumping that stadium noise to the speakers anyway.
The manufactured noise.
I don't know why I'm taking shots at them. They're not even.
Hey, well, everybody's going to have good seats, right? Ain't nobody going to be in the upper deck if you're only letting 15,000 in. You better pack them in the bottom.
Well, I'm sure they're going to have them spaced out. They're not going to be.
Well, that's true.
That's
true.
We'll see. We still got some time, so we'll see what happens with that. All right, with this release, Roland, can you give me 3 takeaways from the schedule that you have initially from this release?
Yeah, so I kind of did 3 takeaways, 2 just general NFL takeaways, and 1 Dallas Cowboy takeaway, since Justin and I are the Cowboys fans on the podcast.
100%.
So my first one that I took away from the season schedule coming out was no European games this year. There are no games being played overseas for the first time in a while. And I know that was a big initiative for the NFL over the past couple of years, as Roger Goodell's been trying to grow the game globally and try and speed up the growth of football throughout the world, kind of similar to how basketball's been doing it, although they're way behind the NBA. But there's been talks over the past couple of years of a potential European team or something like that, but I think that's going to kind of take a hit this year. But I don't think anybody would mind the Jags going to Europe, but that's true. But so that's my first takeaway, is the no European games. I caught that little jab, Ben. And then the second one that I had for the general NFL was Brady is on prime time 5 times this year. So that's either Monday Night Football, or the Sunday night kicker, or Thursday Night Football, I believe. So he's going to be on prime time 5 times. That's the most out of any team or player in the NFL. So they're really trying to take advantage of Brady in this new setting. I think they're thinking there's going to be a lot of points scored in these games, which on paper I don't see how they don't average at least 30. And then my last takeaway, this one's that Cowboys related one, is the Cowboys' December schedule is brutal. Once they get through the Redskins in November 26th, they play the Ravens on December the 3rd, the Bengals on December the 13th, the 49ers on December the 20th, and then they finish with the Eagles on December the 27th. So
that's right, bro. You haven't seen heavy.
That's a pretty hard schedule for December. And it's the most important time of the year. So if the Cowboys, as they like to do, making it like to the last week of the season, whether or not they're going to make the playoffs, I don't know if that's going to work this year, because who knows what the Bengals are going to be like. And we already know the Ravens and the Niners are 2 of the top 3 teams in the league right now. So those are my 3 takeaways.
So from those 3 takeaways, I just was wondering, do you have the numbers of what the Bucks on prime time were last season? What
I
kind
do
of
not.
increase is it?
But I think they were only on prime time. It had to have been less than 3 times, because I know they were talking about Gerald McCoy. He was on the Bucks last year, and now he's on the Cowboys, and he's I think on 4 primetime games. And he brought up the fact that he had only been on 3 previously with the Bucks throughout his whole career, or something to that effect.
Wow.
So I don't even know if the Bucks had 3 primetime games last year.
Those were all Thursday nighters too. The Bucks, they ain't putting them on primetime. But Roland, tough schedules, bro. The Texans, our offseason has been we've just been having to dodge shots from everybody on these Twitter streets. And now it seems like they just put gasoline on top of it all, bro. We open the NFL. We play the champs. Week 1. We have to answer for those 44 unanswered points that they put up on us.
God, that was a terrible game for y'all.
While they get their championship rings, here come the Texans marching into KC. And after that game, well, surprise, surprise, you play the Baltimore Ravens. Come on, bro.
The fastest team in the league, by the way.
The Texans are going to be underdogs in both of those games. So, this sucks. This sucks. I'm hoping for 1-1. Obviously, what's expected is 0-2. I'm hoping for 1-1. 2-0, we're winning the Super Bowl, and y'all are going to hear about it if we go 2 games. But after that, bro, we play the Steelers, and after that, we play the Vikings. So the first month of the season is brutal for the Texans.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough 4-game stretch to start the season off for sure. Just off the top of my head, I'd see 2-2 as the best case scenario there.
For sure, and it would probably be the latter too. Hoping that we can beat Minnesota. The Minnesota game's in Houston, so at least we don't have to go to Minnesota. So I could see us beating the Steelers, although we're going into Pittsburgh, which is always a tough place to play. But I see that as being a competitive game. The first 2 games, man. We went into Baltimore last year and they ran through us. I'm hoping that this time in Houston, week 2, we can get it together. Maybe the Chiefs have a little Super Bowl letdown. But my first takeaway was, damn, they threw gasoline on this Texans fire that's been brewing all off season.
Bill O'Brien, hot seat after the first 3 games, depending on the start, maybe.
A couple of years ago, we started off 0-4 and then rattled off 9 in a row and ended up winning the division and making playoffs. So I'm not going to say we won't make playoffs if we start off 0-2. But, bro, it's going to be an uphill climb, I feel, already from the start of the season. My second take is Thanksgiving is going to be tremendous. I'm going to love Thanksgiving. The Texans are finally on Thanksgiving. We're the early game against the Lions. We're going to Detroit. Right after that, we got the Cowboys and the Redskins. After that, we got Pittsburgh against the Ravens. So Thanksgiving's going to be awesome.
Isn't that game?
Forward to that.
Isn't
Yeah.
that game played like at 7 in the morning though? The
11.
Texans.
11. Hey, it's better than London. Hey, and this was going to be one of my takes, but you obviously mentioned the no London game, so I'm just going to piggyback. But bro, waking up at 8:30 in the morning, turning on the TV and football is on, then that game finishes and the rest of the slate starts. I mean, I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that. Especially last year, the Texans played the Jags. Like I said, no home games for the Jags because they play twice a year over there, but that's going to suck. And my third take is finally less primetime games for the Browns. They had their hype, the Hard Knocks hype. Finally, it's over. With 7 teams, I think the Browns will be battling for a playoff spot, but I believe they only had 2 primetime games this year. When last year, I mean, it seemed like they were on Monday night every other week. So those were my three takeaways from the schedule dropping.
All right, just to respond to some of that, Ben, do you know who the Hard Knocks is going to be this season?
I don't, and I was actually going to ask, are they going to have a Hard Knocks?
Okay.
I know that they
It's a
released
non-playoff team.
They released like 3 options, yeah, and I actually think one was the Raiders, I believe, and I would say that it might be the Raiders, even though they've been on it previously.
They were last year's, weren't they?
Were they last year's? Well, I don't know if they do back to back.
He was.
But the Raiders with the move to Vegas would be a very interesting one. And the Bengals with Joe Burrow coming in, or the Dolphins with Tua. Those are the 3 teams that I would see them doing as far as missing the playoffs. Obviously, the Cowboys missed the playoffs too, but I don't see them being on Hard Knocks. I think they're trying to lock in on the season, and they don't want that distraction, even though it's more revenue for Uncle Jerry. But it seems that they're pretty locked in on this playoff run. So
the other thing is, I'm also looking forward to Thanksgiving. That's a good lineup for football.
Oh, yeah.
And Roland, I just had a comment. As you mentioned, no European games this season.
Or no London games.
No London games. Obviously, I think the more viable thing in the future, I know they want to maybe bring a team to London, but don't you think maybe Mexico's a better option? I mean, the amount of fans they already have established there to bring a team down south?
They make more sense with the amount of fans that they have already. You don't have to, I think there's like an educational standpoint to bringing the game over to England and Europe and teaching, kind of making them understand what American football is and how this works and whatnot. And that understanding is already there, I think, in Mexico. And then it makes more sense geographically, most importantly for me. I just don't think it makes sense having a team every freaking week or 8 weeks out of the year, have a different team fly overseas to play another team. I'd rather just keep them in North America.
Yeah. So just for the globalization of the sport, it's better to be in Europe.
Justin, you're a genius, bro. Mexico, put them in Monterrey, name them the Zetas. Are you kidding me?
Oh my God, that's controversial, man. Come on,
and then you do gritos and AK-47 shots to distract the other team. That's a smart idea, Justin. But
put them in the stadium with the mountains in the background. That's one of the most beautiful stadiums in Mexico. I love that.
Isn't that Stadium Azteca?
I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah. And that's where they have this game.
One game a year, but they say that the fields over there are real beat up. Obviously, like when you go, like Roland said, to London, it's worldwide, man. So Mexico is just right here next to the U.S. They want to go worldwide, so London would be the place. Logistically, obviously, it's a more speed bumps logistically, just on the distance you got to travel. But if you want to hit it big, definitely Europe and London. That's the way to go. But yeah, the Monterrey Zetas, bro.
I mean, Mexico is already big. Football's already big in Mexico. I have some friends from Chihuahua, and they're big Broncos fans. I don't know why. I don't know what the coverage is over there that they get that, but every time he comes over, we talk. He's all about the Broncos. All right, this is the end of the NFL talk. I know we all saw it, man. Earl Thomas this week. What are y'all thinking?
That stuff definitely does not happen all the time. Whatever he was talking about.
Of his response. It happens all the time.
These things happen. No, Earl, they don't. I love you, Earl. I've liked you. You're one of my favorite Texas Longhorn players growing up as a kid. But this shit is crazy, that what you and your brother were doing. And honestly though, and I will say this, I'm not shooting him bail. I'm not trying to change the subject. But the craziest thing about the whole story was the fact that his chick did not know that there was a chamber or a bullet in the chamber, and she was pointing the gun at his head or at him or whatever, and waving at him with her finger on the trigger and no safety engaged. Oh my God. The story could be so much different today.
It could be rest in
just
peace.
based on those facts. Exactly. So to me, I'm not trying to disregard what him and his brother were doing. Adultery is bad. Cheating on your wife, shouldn't do that. But the wife, man, she could have killed him. She could have killed him. I don't know.
And she called all her homegirls too, and she's like, "We're gonna bust up in here." Like, bro, that was some Love and Hip Hop or like Housewives, Real Housewives type stuff. I'm surprised that there wasn't cameras behind her when she was going in there. I remember growing up, I used to grow up, we'd come home and that show Cheaters would always be on. Like,
my God.
Bro, that was my show. And I mean, that's what I thought of right there. Like that guy walking in with her, like to confront Earl Thomas. Oh my God, it brought back so many memories of that show. But wow, then it happened here in Austin, just up I-35. So we know Earl went to school there in Austin. But yeah, bro, that's wild. And the wife ended up going to jail. And then him saying, you know, like, I don't want questions. What do you expect, bro? I mean, come on. This is some ludicrous stuff that you're doing. Like, it's a little wild. Yeah. Wild.
And I don't know if that comment that was surfacing on Twitter, I know a couple of my group chats was throwing that in there, but Mark Ingram was like, dude, we're definitely going to have questions. He like responded to his tweet. He's, I don't know what you're talking about. I have questions.
Yeah.
And oh man, I just think that Earl Thomas is going to be about a lot of jokes in the locker room this upcoming year. So
they had photoshopped his wife's head onto Derrick Henry and a pistol onto the arm with a stiff arm.
The memes will be coming.
It's bad, bro. You know the internet's undefeated. Earl, we love you. Shit, it sucks that it happened, bro, but the internet's going to kill you. Look, I'm not taking no part in it, all right? But you're going to get killed.
So I just got to ask. I mean, I doubt it, but I just want to ask, does this affect him with the Ravens organization at all? Or it's just a personal matter, and that's just personal business? I
saw that they were looking into it a bit, actually. I mean, it shouldn't affect them just based on his play. Like, he's obviously a very important piece. And, okay, he was cheating on his wife. You know, it's happened before. It's happened where teammates cheat. You know, a teammate hooks up with another teammate's wife. And whether they have to trade a guy out off the team or whatever happened. Yeah, exactly. So it's
Tony Parker.
Tony Parker too. hey, my buddy Jovi will say Tony Parker's a great teammate. Still Hall of Famer and a great teammate.
It just depends what teammates you're talking about.
I guess.
Maybe not Brent Barry, but he's a good teammate to other guys.
All right, well that's it for NFL talk, guys. Appreciate that. All right, let's get through some MMA talk. Just some quick hitters. Something that La Hoya said recently was that he could knock out Conor within 2 rounds. Now, he is talking about boxing. Is De La Hoya accurate here? Can he knock down Conor within the 2 rounds?
Was he, like, sober when he said this?
He was in his trans...
Was it just like a text or something?
In the fishnets. He was in the fishnets when he said it.
Oh, it must have been that. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. No. I think Conor would beat him in a boxing match. At his age right now, like right now, today, yeah.
I think it's just all banter and a way to get into the headlines. I'm not paying much attention to it. I don't think it happened. I think Dana, who dislikes Conor dislikes De La Hoya. I think he wouldn't mind Conor putting an ass whooping on De La Hoya, but it won't happen. So I think it's just banter and De La Hoya trying to get in the headlines because MMA is the only show in town right now.
What a weird guy.
That was just a little off. I didn't think he'd say something like that. Yeah. Just want to say from what I saw, Anderson Silva is getting some stem cell needed procedures. And normally when you get stem cells because you're coming back, it might take some time. But in other sports, I've seen people get stem cells and make a really good recovery. What do you expect from this recovery for Anderson Silva?
I expect him to keep fighting just because that's all he knows how to do and that's all he's ever done. As we've seen, though, lately in his career, I mean, he's declining big time. He's obviously still the name, but he just doesn't have the juice behind him anymore. The stem cell at first, I mean, I thought he was done. I thought Dana was going to force him to retire, put him in the Hall of Fame, and just have him show up to fight, sign autographs, and just be there to show face, and because Dana's been known for paying a couple fighters back in the day, Liddell and some of those guys, just for being around. The guys that are pioneers to the sport. So, but it seems like he's doing this because he wants to get back in action. I don't like it. I think he's done, and I think he should just stay out. Nothing good can come out of him getting back in the octagon. No title aspirations. Do you want to go off on a win? Fine. Book him an easy fight. Let him get his win, and that's it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a case of being a little too late. I mean, what is he, like 45 years old? I mean, there's only so much the stem cell can do for him. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I do think he had one of the greatest primes of any UFC fighter in the history, but that's just what it was. It was a prime, that was the past. He's been on a downward trajectory for a little while now. And yeah, I mean, hopefully it gets him maybe 2 or 3 fights where he can feel like he's the old Anderson Silva and maybe reel off some wins before he goes off into the sunset. But yeah, nothing more than just maybe trying to get a couple more fights out of those knees.
Yeah, I think it is going to extend his career a few. He's still a known name. You just got to book him right. You're not going to give him no title fight, like Ben said.
And, I don't think he's
taken a lot of head damage. So
bad. Yeah.
So
for sure, I agree, Justin.
I don't even think you can book him with top 10 talent.
No.
You just put him on the main card somewhere, and it helps push the card a little more because of his name.
Curtain jerker for a pay-per-view, I guess.
Yeah. That's what that's gonna be. So as y'all saw UFC 249, I gotta say I think they handled it really well as far as the virus goes. Bringing in individual saunas for everybody, taking the test right away, and then taking another test after the cut, just to make sure they're not in contact with the virus. Now we did have someone that got it, and they were able to keep them away for the most part, and then they took them away from the hotel as soon as they knew it was confirmed. I absolutely like the way they handled it. What about you all?
No, he didn't get it at the hotel. He got it from a family member who already had it.
Yes, correct.
So we're talking about Jacare Souza. As soon as he arrived, he let the UFC know that he had been in contact with a family member who believed to have it. They were testing everybody upon arrival. He and his 3 cornermen all tested positive. If you saw on the face-offs on Thursday, now up until that point, it seemed like they had it known that he had it. They were still waiting for results to come back. But he was the only fighter that during face-offs had rubber gloves on. Everybody else did have, some fighters had a mask, some didn't. He did have the mask and rubber gloves. So it didn't seem like he had direct contact with anybody as far as skin to skin. But I know Dana was dapping everybody up as they walked up. They were handling it very well. We saw a lot of fighters posting the nose swab. I mean, that looked like it hurt. Like it just looked uncomfortable as hell.
Ugly.
I would never want that done to me, ever. And I think that's what messed up Tony Ferguson and why he wasn't Tony Ferguson in the main event. I'm just kidding. But yeah, man,
for sure.
They took the right precautions and they ran a good event. Everything ran smooth. That one fighter, he wasn't able to fight. Nobody else got infected, and it was a good turnout. It was exciting fights.
Yeah, really impressive. I think they use the phrase, this is going to be the blueprint for combat fighting and sports going forward, as far as the testing and switching out even the cutman. The same cutman was not, or not cutman, or the hand wrap person, whoever was wrapping the person in the locker room was not doing that for every fighter. They were switching them out. And taking every single precaution. And then even though Jacare ended up testing positive, upon arriving, he got isolated because, as Ben said, he let them know that he came in contact with a family member who potentially had it. So even the risk of having somebody show up that potentially came in contact with the coronavirus and could have potentially ended the whole event had he gone into the general public that was there in Jacksonville in that little hotel that they had for everybody. But it seems like as soon as he got there, he got isolated and was put in his own little spot. So they mitigated any risk of him spreading the disease. So they handled it perfectly. They were sanitizing the octagon in between fights, which I was really interested to see because, I mean, you can only keep an octagon so clean with all the blood that's potentially spraying and whatnot, but they were doing the best that they could to really spray that down and make sure it was as clean as possible. And then you even saw, I thought it was funny, the commentators, they were all like on a different screen. They were not sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, DC, and John Anik, they were doing like the whole pre-show thing normally where they were standing kind of close with one another. But when they were doing the broadcast, they were sitting separate of one another. So I thought that was interesting. And then my last comment on this will be Joe Rogan made a big stink about, hey, I'm not going to be the guy that's doing this commentating during the coronavirus. I just can't do it. Oh, my God, it's so dangerous. And then he's out there without a mask talking with guys. Like,
Shaking
I know none of
hands.
the commentators were wearing a mask, but this guy, I mean, he was shaking hands, getting all up in their grill, asking them questions as he's supposed to do, but with no mask. So, Joe Rogan, get out of here with that.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
All right. One thing we did have going on last week was our pick'em contest. So I'm just gonna go over the results on that here.
What do we got?
You want to talk about this, Justin?
I know. Yeah, I know. None of my dogs.
Guys, I
came-
just have to go over it. I don't
Hey,
want to talk about
I
this.
should
wanna
get
talk
the win
about
for
it.
Uriah Hall because I did have Hall and Jacare didn't show up.
Oh,
He tested
okay.
positive for COVID.
That's like the little asterisks. We'll count that as in the asterisks.
What do we got for the scores?
All right, Roland, we got 6 points last week.
Nice.
Justin, 7 points last week. Ben
right.
came in with 5. And as far as our 2 YouTube participants, Josh and Gabby, I think we should just get them something anyway just for being our first 2 participants. Josh had 5 and Gabby had 2. Now, I saw Gabby's way of going through her picks. It was a pretty interesting way that she made her picks. Her picks were based on who had the best beard and who had more tattoos if they didn't have beards.
Yeah,
Hey,
I guess that's
She
why
might
she
be
only
onto
has 2
something
points. No, she's not
Later
on 10.
on, who knows?
Not
We'll see.
strategic at all. Not strategic.
It's a small sample size.
Yeah.
Sample size. We'll see what happens next time.
We'll see.
For sure. A couple things from 249 though. A couple takeaways. Obviously, we missed on the Ferguson fight. Justin Gaethje was just more patient. I thought a key thing in the fight was when his corner told him just take 10% off of every punch. After he started doing that, it seemed like he started touching Ferguson up more than just trying to land that haymaker knockout blow that he usually does. So Tony never really got his elbows going. I mean, aside from that uppercut, he had a leg sweep where he kind of took Justin off of his feet, but nothing really for Tony. I wish the ref would have let him go out on his shield. He wanted to. Obviously, we found out now that he has a broken orbital. But I mean, the guy didn't get dropped. We know he's a savage. He's gonna keep going. Another one with the co-main event. Like I said, I didn't think that fight was gonna be very close. I feel like Cejudo ran through Cruz. He was a little bit bloody due to that headbutt that him and Cruz collided heads with. But Cruz, after the fight, saying that the referee stopping it robbed him and that he smelled like cigarettes and alcohol. I thought that was very unprofessional.
Very.
In the
It
past,
wasn't Cruz like.
it wasn't Cruz like at all, because in the past when he's lost, he's been on the podium and he's answered questions. After getting his ass whooped by Garbrandt, he went to the podium, he stood there, no excuses. But to say that the referee smelled like alcohol and cigarettes, I mean, we're talking about the only sport going on during Corona, all these special circumstances we're talking about. And you're telling me the referee that's reffing the co-main event's going to be drunk? Maybe he smoked a couple of cigarettes because, hey, smokers got to smoke, I guess. But as far as being drunk for a co-main event, a championship fight, get out of here, Dominic.
Yeah, I don't like the assassination of Peterson's character there. And, you know, we talked about it in our group chat. I think Dominic Cruz had a little bit of a point as far as the uncertainty, you know, by who's deciding your fights and who's reffing your fights and so on and so forth. But it was just more so just him being mad at the situation and getting, you know, pieced up by Henry. So he just has a really good way of sounding articulate and making his thoughts come out well. But he essentially just assassinated Peterson's character because he didn't like the outcome, which I never like. I mean, I thought there's more respect between Robbie Lawler and Herb Dean. I thought that was way more controversial than what happened with Dominic Cruz and Peterson. And right afterwards, Robbie Lawler and Herb Dean like shook hands and like, dude, it's good. Like, it's okay. You're doing your job. And that's just what Peterson was doing his job and actually protecting Dominic Cruz from getting fucked up further. Yeah. So definitely doing his job. And I hate to see guys assassinate others' character for no reason.
Like they said on the broadcast, it was about 11 unanswered strikes after the knee and after that follow-up punch that Cejudo ran in there with. So yeah, and Greg Hardy obviously improving drastically. A future matchup that I'd like to see for him. I mean, I know Derek Lewis is in the top 5. That might be a little bit too much, but maybe a matchup against Verdum. Verdum didn't look too well. I know we all had him in our contest, and he took the fight to the ground, got full mount, went for a couple of submission attempts, but never really locked anything in. And I mean, he was fighting with his back to the cage the whole fight, so he lost a decision. So that's something as far as Kattar, I would like to see Kattar either get the rematch against the dude who he just fought, the Russian. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Help me out here, Justin. Zabit. Or I would like to see Kattar against Yair Rodriguez. I think that would be an awesome stand-up match. So I think that would be a decent fight. And I know that we covered the Cowboy stuff earlier, but yeah, those were just a couple of. Cejudo, I don't think he's retiring. I think it was a money play. I know Ariel Helwani tweeted he didn't get the pay raise that he wanted for this fight. He's 33 years old. I don't see him retiring just yet. He's got arguably the best win streak, the run. I mean, Demetrius Johnson, TJ Dillashaw, Marlon Moraes, and Dominic Cruz. It doesn't get better than that. So he might be retiring, and riding off into the sunset. But I just see him being too young. He hasn't made enough money to retire, if we're being honest.
I think he is going to retire. I think unless he gets that money fight.
I think he needs his money. He drives people. He drives viewership. I think he's getting to that point where people want to see him because of his antics and the way he talks. His whole Triple C thing turns you on, turns you off. But if it turns you off, it's going to make you turn his fight on to see what happens with him.
It's polarizing.
Yeah, it's polarizing. Thank you, Justin. That's a great word to use for Henry Cejudo. But another kind of takeaway, I'll do 2 before I sign off on the on UFC 249 is Gaethje. I do want to see him get that fight with Conor. We were talking about that pre-podcast. I think that'd be a good matchup, a good striking battle between Gaethje and Conor. And you still got Khabib, who's going through Ramadan. So, I mean, when's he realistically going to be able to fight? And Justin Gaethje, I mean, from what I saw, looks like he'd be ready to go by July, possibly International Fight Week, maybe against Conor McGregor. I think that'd be a nice little matchup to have. And then my last takeaway, and I don't necessarily have a matchup I'd like to see him with, but man, for not being like so much of a striker, Bryce Mitchell is super fun to watch. He took that guy down every single round and attempted at least 5 or 6 different submissions every single round, including like 2 or 3 twister attempts, which he almost got, which is crazy. But
Mr. Twister.
Props to Rosas for not, or Rosa, I don't know if it's with or without an S, but props to him, Boston Strong, for not tapping out. There's that one where he got him in that triangle in the very beginning where his face was turning red. I thought he was about to go to sleep, but no, Bryce Mitchell, super exciting, and UFC, get him his camo shorts.
Yeah, I think that's happening. My biggest takeaway from UFC 249 was the step up for Justin Gaethje in striking. Trevor Whitman has him going on. Trevor Whitman strikers are always pretty good, but man, Gaethje looked like he took 2 or 3 levels up Saturday night. I mean, I was just so impressed with that striking.
I know they said the winner was going to get Khabib, but I could definitely. He didn't take much damage, like we said. Just a couple of things Tony hit him with. I could see him taking that money fight against Conor in July, like Roland mentioned, International Fight Week, and then getting in with Khabib, October, September maybe. So Justin Gaethje this is the highest his stock has ever been.
Oh yeah.
He definitely performed the way that, like I said, he didn't drop Tony. But whether that went to a decision or not, he was going to win the fight. I just wish the ref would have let Tony go out on his shield. I mean, the guy did make weight twice. He earned that with his 12-fight win streak. I feel like he at least earned to be stopped, hit the mat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because not once did his back touch the mat.
No, he kept marching forward like a zombie, man.
And every time that he would get tagged, he'd get right back in the pocket, man. I mean, it wasn't going well for him. But like they say, the boogeyman El Cucuy, he was right back in there. And he looked like El Cucuy after that. Because, damn.
Yeah, no. You guys brought up Gaethje and Ferguson one more time. And I just have to give Ferguson his props for taking the fight and showing up there, considering all circumstances and everything that he stood to lose. I mean, he came out and said it, like, I'm a combat fighter. I'm a fighter. I'm not going to stay on the shelf. I'm going to go out and fight. I'm not going to play this game. He's like, that's why I make fun of Conor McGregor and Khabib for being the way that they are, because they try and play the game, and I'm just out here trying to fight. Whether or not that's ultimately the right thing to do when you're thinking about your career and, you know, setting yourself up for title shots, it's one way of doing it, and it's definitely made me a fan over time, seeing him attack fights that way and just not being scared. Like, why are you going to try and avoid guys or play the game that way? I understand why, but hey, man, props to Tony for taking the fight. Didn't work out, but
yeah, I think with this loss, I don't think his stock dropped that much for Tony.
No, it's a little, to me, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because we got to get to some breakdowns of the next card, but it makes me believe if he's at that top echelon with the top percentage of the UFC, the top 1 or 2%. That's my only question with that. I think he's a potentially B+, A- guy, but is he truly an A+ fighter? I don't know.
Top 10 pound for pound is what you're saying.
That's fair. Exactly. That's fair. I wish he would have mixed it up a little more. He tried the Granby roll late, but he was already all busted up. I wish he would have tried switching levels like when he was a little bit fresher. One thing we found out is he's got a Hall of Fame chin, bro. Because all the shots that Gaethje was hitting him with, I mean, that's put everybody out lately. And he didn't hit the mat. Yeah, he broke his eye, and he was shaking his head. He looked like a damn zombie, like trying to get his balance back. It looked like his legs weren't working. It was a savage performance. It's what we expected. We expected blood. We got blood. The fight didn't go our way. Now we're on to UFC Fight Night, and we're back, baby. So let's go. Let's kick it off into UFC Fight Night, and we're gonna start from top to bottom. So we're gonna go a main event.
Let's do
We're
this.
just gonna do We're gonna do the main card for Wednesday. Then we're gonna do the main card for Saturday. All right. So kicking it off on the Wednesday card with the main event, we got Anthony Lionheart Smith coming in at 33-14 record, and he's a -155 favorite against Glover Teixeira coming in at +135. He's 30-7 in his record. Now this fight was scheduled for April in Lincoln, Nebraska, so it's one of those that kind of got delayed, and now it's happening. Obviously, Anthony Smith's been on top of the 205 division. You know, we know that he lost that title fight to John Jones, where John Jones hit him with the illegal knee. The ref stopped the fight, gave Anthony Smith the choice of continuing or not continuing, and actually took a point away from John Jones. So if he wouldn't have been able to continue, Anthony Smith could have been the champion due to DQ.
Yeah.
But like his nickname, Lionheart, he kept fighting. Obviously, lost the decision. Smith's coming into this though 4-1. That only lost to John Jones in his last 5 fights. He's 1 or 2 fights away from being right back in that title picture. Obviously, it'd be best for him if John Jones lost the title. That way it could be a fresh matchup, although he has fought Santos and lost to Santos previously. It would help him out of the title switch, but regardless, if he wins 1 or 2 fights, he's right back in the picture. He's younger, he's quicker, and he's more powerful on the feet. As far as Glover Teixeira, he's also 4-1 in his last 5 fights. That loss was a UD to Corey Anderson. He's coming in on a 3-fight win streak, though. We know he's the veteran, and he's a beast on the ground. He's savvy on the ground. He wants to get it to the ground. So I see as Glover Teixeira as a gatekeeper, really no real title aspirations anymore at his age and where he's at. He's just a real test for prospects to see if they are that caliber to be in the top 5 and get those next level fights. So in this one, I know Anthony Smith -155. I actually think he should be a little bit a higher favorite. Now, I know that he does need to avoid the ground, but I expect this fight to stay standing up, and I expect Anthony Smith to piece up Glover Teixeira. It is a main event, so it's 5 rounds. Anthony Smith, 4th round TKO.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too much disagreement out of me on this one. Anthony Smith, definitely like the current trajectory that he's on. I mean, Glover's on a pretty good trajectory too, considering their last 5 fights. But just in terms of the style, I think this plays into Anthony Smith's hands. Glover does like to stand and bang, and he takes a lot of damage in order to inflict damage on somebody else. So I think that's going to play right in Anthony's hands. As Ben said, he's 1 or 2 fights away from being right back in that title picture. To me, just kind of looking at where both guys are at in their careers, one guy's potentially fighting for titles and getting up there, and another guy's kind of like the gatekeeper. This seems like a tune-up fight for me. It seems like they're giving Anthony Smith something to get ready for a Thiago Santos or somebody of that ilk, a step up to make sure he's truly ready for another title shot. So Anthony Smith all day for me.
Yeah, I got Anthony Smith as well. Glover is 4-1 in his last 5, but the last time I saw him with a good striker was Gustafsson, and you saw how that went down. I think Anthony Smith has a little bit more to lose. He's going to be the more motivated fighter. And I got Anthony Smith, and I want to say it's going to be referee stoppage on this one in the 4th.
All right. That's exactly what I said. So we all got Anthony Smith. All right. Up next, heavyweight division. We're moving up.
Big boys.
We got Ben Rothwell coming in at 37-12, and he's a plus 130 underdog against Ovens OSP St. Preux, a minus 150 favorite. He's coming in with a 24-13 record. Now, Ovens St. Preux, 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He's coming off of a Von Flue choke of Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. I hope I said it right.
Props on that, man. That was a good
Hey, I hope I said it right. I might have butchered it a little bit.
One.
But the Russians send location. So OSP, obviously, he was a defensive lineman at Tennessee. He played for the Volunteers, football player in the UFC. He started off at 205. Now he's moved up to the heavyweight division. Just really doesn't want to cut weight. He's a thick dude. Pause. Famous for the Von Flue choke, which is a very hard choke, but he seems to be able to pull it off. That's his go-to. He tends to fight to his competition's level. So we know when John Jones came back from that year layoff, OSP was his comeback fight, and OSP is a bigger guy, but OSP gave him trouble. So one thing about OSP is he tends to fight to his competition's level. This fight against Rothwell, I mean, he's a veteran. He's coming off a TKO win over Stefan Struve, the skyscraper. We know Stefan Struve didn't be all out to didn't end up being all we thought he was going to be coming in at 7 foot in the heavyweight division. Rothwell came back to fight 3 times in 2019 after a 3-year layoff. So he hadn't fought since 2016, but he did fight 3 times last year. He went 1-2 in those fights. Veteran of the sport, 38 years old. His pathway to winning, I see him taking OSP down and laying and preying on him. I don't see him getting the finish. Maybe an uppercut. Rothwell does have a nice uppercut, but I'm going to go ahead and take OSP. I don't think OSP gets the submission, but I think he outlasts. I think Rothwell gasses in the 3rd and give me OSP unanimous 29-28 decision.
Nice. I like that pick, but I'm gonna go ahead here and take the small dog and Ben Rothwell. I know he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, but I do like the competition that he was fighting. Andrei Arlovsky, Ivanov, and then this fight that he has with OSP. I think it's going to be one of those fights where both guys are, trying to go to the ground and whatnot. There's not going to be a whole lot of action in this one, in my opinion. So I think it's going to be a decision fight, or it's going to go to the scorecards and give me the small dog in that instance.
All right.
This is a tough fight for me to pick because Ovens is coming up to heavyweight, and I haven't seen him at that division yet. The only thing is I have seen the last 5 Ben Rothwell fights, and I have not been too impressed lately. Speaking of the Von Flue choke, that choke needs to be renamed. That is the OSP choke I mean,
Yeah.
what's it? 4 times he's pulled it off now.
Yep, 4.
Yeah. So that's got to be renamed. Oh, that's his choke. Just man, it's a toss up for me. I got to go Ovens though. I think Ben is he's out of the UFC after this one. I think so. I'm gonna go Ovens.
OSP, I just expect him to be the busier fighter. That's why I said 29-28 decision. I'll give Ben Rothwell a round, but I just expect OSP to win. So up next, we're going to the lightweight division. We got Alexander the Great Hernandez with an 11-2 record, coming in as a plus 100 underdog, so even money on Hernandez. And we got Drew Dober coming in as a minus 120 favorite with a 22-9 record. Now, Hernandez, we all know he burst onto the scene in 2018. That short notice fight against Beneil Dariush, he ends up knocking out Dariush when Dariush is ranked number 6. He came in short notice, knocked him out in 42 seconds, burst onto the scene. He actually is from New Braunfels, trains in San Antonio. As far as Hernandez, the one thing that I didn't like, he rubbed me the wrong way in the build-up to that Cowboy fight.
Even afterwards too.
And after, he just seemed like a try-hard. Like, he just seemed like a super try-hard with the geriatrics. Like, you already had the fight, bro. You know, you got the fight, go out and win it. And then he absolutely got punked. We've been talking about Cowboy, you know, getting ran through and not winning fights. But he got a young opponent in Hernandez, and he ran a clinic on him. I mean, he finished him similar to that Mike Perry fight when they threw Mike Perry, and he ended up finishing Mike Perry. So Hernandez is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He's coming off a decision win against Grandpa Francisco Trinaldo. As far as Dober, 4-1 in his last 5 fights also. He's won back-to-back first-round KOs. Dober really seems to have been hitting his stride. I know he's a veteran of the Army. Hernandez is a step down in competition because Dober was originally supposed to fight one of our favorite fighters, Valley Represent, Carlos Diego Ferreira. He was supposed to fight him in Oklahoma City. So that fight didn't go through, and they rebooked Dober with Hernandez now here in Jacksonville. So I do think this is a step down from fighting CDF. Now, Dober does have 2 common opponents with Hernandez, and those 2 opponents that Hernandez beat, Dober actually lost to. In Ohm, he lost a decision, and then he got subbed by Dariush in 2019. So we know that's the fight that burst onto the scene, the Dariush win. Dober actually lost to him in 2019. So I give Dober the clear striking advantage in this fight. He needs to avoid it hitting the mat regardless. I really, really like Dober. So I'm going to go with Dober. And I think that he's one of the more sure picks on this card, even at just minus 120 as an underdog.
Yeah, a couple things here for me on this one. Alexander Hernandez, local guy, fights out of San Antonio Ohana Academy. He actually trains above where I get my haircuts, so I kind of got to watch my words here, but don't want to get beat up or anything.
On Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. So I got to watch myself here, but just being truthful about the matter, I do not like the way he was in the build-up to the Cowboy fight, but more so, I did not like the way he took the loss. Months after the fight, he was over here, bashing Cowboy for his fight against Conor, when I think he was bashing him for that fight. It was around that time, and it was like, dude, that same guy who you say laid on the mat against Conor or laid down and got ran over, he ran through you. So what does that make you look like? Right. So I just didn't think that made any sense at all for him to go there. I wish he kind of just would have taken his loss on the chin, because he did get dominated, and just move on. And I think I would be a fan right now if he did that. But anyways, we have that fight here, Hernandez versus Dober. I'm going to have to go with Dober. I think this fight, unless it gets to the mat, is clearly in Dober's wheelhouse. He has a striking advantage. And if he's able to keep this fight off the mat, I think he's going to keep on his positive trajectory. He's won back-to-back fights with a first-round TKO. So I think we could see a finish in this one, depending on where the fight goes. But I'm going to go 3-0 in favor of Dober. I know I haven't thrown those kind of picks out, but I'm taking Dober in this one in dominating fashion.
Hey, Ben, you said you were at the Ryan Spann fight, right? That he fought your cousin?
Yeah.
Alexander Hernandez was actually on that card.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember him fighting.
I don't. But he must have been on the undercard too, though.
I just remember looking him up prior, and I saw him on that Orgullo card. So the only thing with Alexander Hernandez I've seen against a striker was Cerrone, and I saw how that went down. So I'm gonna have to go Dober here, just because I think it'll be the same situation. I think he'll get outstriked again, as long as he avoids that mat. So I'm gonna go Dober.
All right, so everybody's got Dober. Keep an eye on our Twitter. That might be our consensus. Hit. Next up in the bantamweight division, we got Ricky Simón with a 15-3 record. He's coming in as a -65 underdog. I mean favorite, and his nickname isn't Simón Way. It's just Ricky Simón. Versus Ray, the Taz Mexican Devil Borg.
Yeah,
a +145 underdog with a 13-4 record. Ricky Simón, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He's currently on a 2-fight losing streak. We know Faber had his comeback fight. Ricky Simón was like a 2-1 favorite in that one, and Faber knocked him out in about 40 seconds. He started his UFC career on a 3-fight win streak. As far as Simón, he's a stand-up fighter, decent on the ground. Most of his fights go to decision. His positioning in the bantamweight division, it'd be different had he taken care of Faber as a 2-1 favorite. We'd be looking at a dude in the top 10. As far as Ray Borg, we know that he's been in and out of the UFC competition because of his son. His son was very injured. I know even the Joe Rogan podcast, their Cash App was donating money to Ray Borg's son, Ariel Helwani, everybody. So Ray Borg, he also has had a history of missing weight in the UFC. But like we said, his whole UFC career, he's pretty much been dealing with his son's sickness and all the hospital things. He had his title shot against DJ a couple years ago, and he got thrown into that famous armbar that, I mean, it looked like DJ was playing UFC, the video game on Xbox.
Yeah, DJ,
but,
man.
Yeah. He seems to have gotten his groove back because he's on a 2-fight win streak. He's 3-2 his last 5, coming off back-to-back decision wins. He's a wrestler. He grinds. This fight should have good scrambles. On the feet, I'd give Simón the stand-up. I expect the fight to take place on the ground. So I'm going to take my first underdog of the card, and I'm going to go with the Taz Mexican Devil, Ray Borg, at +145.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the small dog on this one, too. I like Ray Borg as a fighter. I know he's had history with missing weight in the past. And then, with his son, there's a lot of emotion on his side right now. But I do think that, his losses say something a little bit about him. And, he lost to Mighty Mouse in a title bout. And, just about everybody in that division lost to Mighty Mouse. So can't blame him there for losing to Demetrius. But I think he's a top fighter. He's been at the top of this division, or towards the top of the division, for the better part of his career, and for good reason. Ricky Simón, I think he's also, a pretty good fighter. But we'll see if he can actually, go ahead and beat perceived top competition here. And I'm a little confused at the line being the way that it is with Ray Borg as a small underdog. I kind of would have expected him to be closer to even, or maybe even a pick'em. So I'm going to be keeping track of how this line moves throughout the week. But I think 145 is good odds for an otherwise toss-up matchup, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, this is just a sentimental pick for me. I'm going Ray Borg. The whole son story. I just want to see that guy win. It's as simple as that. It's just a sentimental pick. I want Ray Borg to win.
All right. Everybody's got Borg. Now, next up, middleweight division, we got Carl Baby K. Roberson.
Baby K. Is that the best nickname?
Baby, no, it's not. It's not. We got something better later.
Okay.
+130 underdog with a 9-2 record, and he's coming in against Marvin the Italian Dream Vittori, -150 favorite, 14-4-1 record. This fight was supposed to happen April 25th. Obviously, coronavirus impacted this fight as well. It was rescheduled. Now we have it. Roberson 3-2 his last 5 fights, 2-fight win streak coming in. His last fight, he beat Roman Kopylov by rear naked choke. Roberson, Contender Series alum. If you remember, he fought Ryan Spann, who actually fought in UFC 249. He knocked out Spann in seconds with elbows. I expect this fight to take place on the feet for the most part. Roberson has won his last 2 by sub, and then he's lost 2 by sub. So he doesn't fare too well on the ground, but then he also gets subs. Like I said, I expect this one to take place on the feet. As far as Vettori, 3-1-1 in his last 5 fights. He's on a 2-fight win streak after losing that split decision to Adesanya. So he had that real tough fight against Izzy. Lost the split decision, which could have gone either way. Izzy couldn't put him out. It was a 3-rounder. I think Izzy would have fared better in a 5-rounder. Regardless, Vettori's a tough SOB, man. He's a good striker. I'd give him the advantage on the feet. I expect the fight to take place on the feet. I give Vettori the edge with 8 of his 14 wins also by sub. I know I said Roberson had 2 wins by sub and then 2 losses by sub. Vettori, 14 of his what? How many wins has he got? 14. I guess all 14 of his wins are by sub, bro. He's 14-4-1. So I give him the advantage on the feet and I give him the advantage on the ground. I got Vettori as a -155 favorite.
Yeah, I'm going to agree once again with Ben here. I'm going Marvin Vettori. It's one of those things where I think he's better in both aspects of the fight game. In this one, he's a better striker. He's a better submission artist, or he's better on the ground, however you want to phrase it. So really, I think this fight's going to stay on his feet. It's going to be a boxing match or a striking match, if you will. And Vettori's going to win this one. So that's where I'm going to end off that main card. I think that's the last one.
Yeah, initially I thought this card was going to be in favor of Vettori a little more. I couldn't believe that it was only a -150. With that being said, I do got Vettori winning it. It's going to be a stoppage too.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'm curious to see curious to hear if we get any inkling of it, how the coronavirus is affecting these lines. Because as you mentioned, there's a couple that we're a little unsure about, but what are the training conditions for a lot of these guys? What are, other factors that go into making a line? So I think that's interesting.
It might take a couple of events. Maybe after the 3 this week, we can see like a difference in the lines where obviously we feel like a lot of these fights should be PK and they got guys as +140 dogs, so we'll see how it goes. But I did want to get quick picks on 2 fights on the preliminary card.
Make them quick. Let's do it.
Plus. Just real quick, we had 5. Obviously, we didn't disagree on any on the main card. So maybe with these 2 for the Wednesday card, we'll disagree in the heavyweight division. Andre the Pitbull Arlovsky +140 underdog with a 28-19 record. He's fighting Felipe Monstro Lins, -140 favorite with a 14-3 record. Lins, I know not many people know him, but he was actually the 2018 PFL heavyweight champ. All 4 wins by stoppage. He didn't fight one time in 2019 after winning that $1 million with PFL. Then he got signed by the UFC. So this is his promotional debut. And as far as the Pitbull, we know that he's a veteran of the game. Obviously, he's been on a skid, getting close to retirement. That's a guy who we might talk about one more vicious KO that he takes, and he might need to retire. I'm going to go with the dude making his promotional debut. And I'm going to go with Lins as a -140, the Monstro.
Yeah, I'm going with this guy just based off his nickname. I'm going Monstro Lins here. I do like his fighting style, has been alluded to. All 4 wins in emphatic fashion with stoppages in the PFL Heavyweight Championship tournament in 2018, or season, excuse me. So even though he didn't fight in 2019, not going to put too much into that because, everybody's been kind of dealing with some unfortunate circumstances with the coronavirus and their regular training schedules. So I'm going to go Lins here in his debut, another guy that comes into the UFC with some knockout power, maybe start a run like Justin Gaethje did against another guy on this preliminary card in his UFC debut.
Yeah. I got Monstro also. Arlovsky hasn't been the same since that Fedor fight. His chin hasn't been the same. It's being held together by some tape right now. So any touch and it's over for the guy. I just don't trust him right now with that chin. So give me Monstro.
We're going to have to disagree once, guys. All right, another quick
I took Rothwell, and you guys
That's
took
true. That's
the
true.
other guy.
That is true. All right, we just got to gain points on Justin. He's in the lead by 2. All right, the last quick pick in the lightweight division, Michael the Menace Johnson, +110 underdog with a 19-15 record against Thiago Moises, -130 with a 12-14 record. Quick, I expect Moises to be able to get it to the ground. The menace is the veteran. If every round starts standing up, so if Johnson catches him, could be lights out. But give me Moises.
Give me Michael Johnson. Give me the vet, man. This guy been the unfortunate benefactor, not benefactor, but he's had some unfortunate matchups in the UFC. He's fought the who's who in that division. So I'm going with Michael Johnson in this one. Give me the small dog.
Yeah, give me MJ too.
All right, dope. Let's get to Saturday's card. For this one, we are only doing the 5 fights on the main card. So we're going to start in the heavyweight division with the main event. We're going to go top down. So this week we will have 12 picks again, but just on the Wednesday and the Friday card. 7 on Wednesday, 5 on Friday. For anybody following along, it's still not too late. We all didn't do too hot. The highest, it was 12 fights. Justin's the highest score was 7. So if you still want to join, like we said, we're going to give away a gift card. Might get a little bit creative with a jersey, whatever it is. You all play along. Just comment. We'll take care of the rest, and we'll update every episode. So the main event, heavyweight division, Alistar, and I hadn't recognized that he changed his name, but I don't like his nickname, the Demolition Man, Overeem. I don't like that.
I don't even remember his previous name now.
I just thought it was Alistar the Reem Overeem.
Yeah, the Reem.
Yeah, the Reem. I mean, come on, that's classic Strike Force K1. So he's coming in with a 45-18-1 record, plus 135 underdog against Walt the Big Ticket Harris with a 13-7 record. He's a minus 170 favorite. The Reem is coming in 2-3 his last 5 fights. He's coming off that KO to Biggie Boy, who we just saw be another victim at the hands of Ngannou. But the Reem was beating Rosenstrike for, like we said, 4 minutes and 50 seconds before getting his lips split open. Overeem, 23 KO wins, 17 subs, 5 decisions. So the dude is an animal. Very chinny though. Doesn't take much to KO him. As of late, he's been fighting more in and out. He goes and picks his shots. Even against Rosenstrike, he got clipped backpedaling, trying to get out of the pocket. So he has been going in and out. For Harris, 3-2 his last 5 fights. First fight back since the death of his daughter. I know we mentioned that previously on the last episode. Yeah. So he's fighting with a heavy heart, man. He's coming off back-to-back KO wins, both in under a minute. So he's been KOing people. Overeem's kind of chinny. Harris has only lost top competition. Reem is top competition. That is the thing. This fight should take place on the feet. I don't expect it hitting the ground. Will the big ticket land the big punch? It's a 5-round fight. I hate to do this, man. I hate to do this, but I'm going to go with the dog, and I'm going to go with Overeem. It's a smart fight, and get back on track.
Cool. No, I like everything that you brought up in that, Ben, but I am going to disagree here. There's nobody that I want to see win more on Saturday than Walt Harris, and everything that he's been going through. Cannot help but feel for him, and just, man, I'm just going to leave it at that. Really do want to see him win. I think he's a really good fighter. He's on an upwards trajectory. I think he fought on that San Antonio card that had a lot of those electric finishes, and I think he had one of the quicker ones that night. So I like Walt Harris. Speaking of Overeem, though, just touching base on him, he has become a little bit more strategic in his fighting. I think that's helped him a little bit. Like we were talking last week, he was beating Rosenstrike arguably a couple rounds to zilch before he got knocked out. So the only thing I will say is we do know Reem can get knocked out, and I think Walt Harris is going to go in there and try and force the issue. He's going to go in there, and he's not going to let Overeem try and pick and go, and instead of standing in the pocket. I think he's going to force the issue and get the knockout.
Right.
Yeah, I think Overeem has more pathways to victory here. But for me, man, I don't want anybody to win more than Walt Harris. I want that dude to get this win. Everything he's been through, I want it so bad for this guy. I'm going Walt Harris. I really want it for him.
Definitely picking with my heart on this one.
Absolutely.
I feel you, and I feel the same way. But I needed to be on the other side if I wanted to catch up.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm going the other way. All right, up next, the women's division, Claudia Gadelia with a 17-4 record, minus 195 favorite against Angela Overkill Hill with a 12-7 record, plus 155. So Gadelia coming in with a 3-2, 3-2 record, her last 5 fights. She's coming in off a decision win over Marcos. Gadelia also a gatekeeper. We knew that she could never get past Joanna Champion. She's got 2 to 3 good rounds in her. For a 3-round fight, she might be better. This is a 3-round fight. Although she has gotten a little over the hill, she tends to gas out. And she's been alternating wins and losses her last 5 fights. 4 fights, so she's coming off a win. She's a decision machine. As far as Hill, 4-1 in her last 5 fights. Coming in riding a 3-fight win streak. She's improved tremendously in her last 3 fights. She's fought a lot different, a lot more IQ. She's gotten a lot smarter than her earlier fights. Women's fight, man, bathroom break fight. Take the underdog. Give me Overkill. Hey, was I lying about the Watterson and Cookie Monster fight? That was a bathroom break fight.
Yeah, it was pretty controversial at the end with the scorecards, but that was probably the most exciting part of the fight, other than that little flurry at the end. But yeah, you're right on that one. And I'm gonna have to agree with you. I'm taking Angela Hill here. I give her so much props for how active she's been. Very recently in 2019, she fought 4 times. Yep. She went 2-2 in those fights, but I mean that's okay. She started off 2020 on the right foot with 2 victories. So that's where I'm going on this fight. I like Angela Hill. She's a more active fighter. Claudia Gadella, she's very, very active on Instagram. She's one of my favorite follows, but she's not one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I think we saw what level of fighter she was by not being able to get past the top competition in the strawweight division, and I think that's kind of where she finds herself. She's kind of in purgatory. She's not top class. She's not top pound for pound fighter in the division, but she's not towards the bottom either. So she's gonna stay in the UFC a while, but not gonna fight for a title again.
Yeah, as Roland mentioned, Gadelia is one of my favorite Instagram follows. I've shared pictures with y'all so many times in our groups. And I love her personality. I got to see her against Joanna Champion on The Ultimate Fighter, and I liked her as a coach and everything that she brought. But she is a gatekeeper, and it's just hard for me not to go for. I'm gonna just choose anyway. Gadelia. I got to go Gadelia.
All right, fair enough. Next up, what I think will be the fight of the night in the featherweight division: Dan 50K Ige plus 105 underdog against Edson Barboza 20-8. Coming in as a minus 135 favorite. Ige 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Only 1 loss in his UFC career. He's a Contender Series alum. Smart fighter, high IQ, man. He takes the fight wherever he can win it. That's what I like about him, and he's on the verge of breaking into the top 10 with a win here. Barboza 1-4 in his last 5 fights. He's been through the ringer. We know he's fought Gaethje. He's fought Ferguson. He's fought Khabib. This guy's fought everybody. This is a step down in competition because of everybody that he's fought. Although, has he been broken because of all those guys that he's fought? I do think Barboza is towards the end of his career. I don't know how much he has with all those wars in him. I'm going to take another underdog. It feels like I've taken 3 underdogs in 3 fights. I'm going to go with Dan 50K Ige to get a decision win.
I'm going to disagree here. I'm going Edson Barboza as a short favorite here. I think Ben brought up a lot of good points as far as, despite this being a step down in competition, perceived step down in competition, no disrespect to Dan here, but how much does Barboza have left in the tank? Regardless of how much he has left, I still think he has enough left to get past somebody in Dan, who's still, as Ben mentioned, trying to get into the top 10 and make a name for himself in this featherweight division. So I'm going to go with Edson Barboza. He's a well-known name, probably why he's the small favorite here, but I'm going to go ahead and take him.
Barboza hasn't been the same since the Khabib fight. But that being said, he still has some of the most ferocious kicks in the game. I got Barboza on this one.
All right. Next up, middleweight division, Eric, ya boy.
Alabama.
13-4 record, plus 130 underdog coming in against
Jotko.
He's fighting Jotko, bro, with a 21-4 record, minus 160 favorite. Anders 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He is on a 2-fight win streak. This dude's been active since he came into the UFC. He was a linebacker for Alabama. He was on that national title team. He's an athlete. He brings power, mostly a stand-up fighter. He needs to avoid being taken down in this fight and being stalled on. He can't gas out. I think it was a fight against Santos where, he was dead. He couldn't even stand in the third round.
Yeah, that was bad.
Jotko 2-3 in his last 5 fights, 2-fight win streak also coming in. His 2 wins have been to lower competition. Prior to that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak. He needs to grapple. Like I said, he needs to take Anders down. I see Anders landing something early. Give me another underdog. I'm going 4 for 4 with the dogs. Give me Anders in this one.
Okay.
Dang. I like Anders in this fight. I'm probably going to have... Man, I don't know where I'm going on this one. This was... Honestly, whoever's following this podcast, do not take my pick on this fight seriously. I'm just going with Eric Anders on this one. I like taking short dogs and otherwise toss-up fights. I think if he can keep this standing up and make it a striking match, he's going to win because I don't think Jotko has too many weapons other than trying to get the fight to the ground and hopefully lay and pray or grind his way to a victory. Excuse me. So I'm going with Eric Anders, short dog, Alabama Roll Tide. Let's go.
Yeah, same thing for me. It's going to be a boy. I'm going to take Anders. They're both 2-3. It's just a toss-up for me. Give me the dog just for the sake of the podcast contest.
All right, and the last fight on Saturday that we're going to be picking from, the curtain jerker for the main card in the featherweight division, Song Kung Fu Monkey Yadong.
That's the nickname, the best one.
Yeah, the Kung Fu Monkey. With a 15-4 record, and he's a -190 favorite against Marlon Chito Vera, coming in with a 15-5 record, +150. Chito Vera 5-0 in his last 5 fights, all 5 by finishes. He's grinded through the UFC roster, man. I remember him on The Ultimate Fighter. He came in from Ecuador, and he was super low level. He's become an exciting fighter, super good scrambles. He has been losing a lot of his fights, and then he finds a way to get a finish late. As far as Yadong, 4-0-1 his last 5 fights. He's unbeaten in the UFC, that one no contest. It was the 4-0-1. The one was for the draw. So he's coming off a draw to Cody, the Stanimal Stamen, and Cody Stamen's pretty top competition. I do think that he's better competition than Chito Vera. I love Chito Vera. He's a good Twitter follow as well.
Yes.
But with this one, I'm going to have to go with Yadong as a mind. So I'm going to take, this is my only favorite. I'm going to go with Yadong. I love Chito, but I think that he's not going to find the finish in this one, and he's going to lose a decision.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one where I'm going to have to take the short dog just because the way that I'm looking at this fight, it can really go either way. So I'm going with Marlon Chito Vera, +150 right now.
Yeah, give me Cheeto as well. It just comes down to him being one of my favorite fighters, and that's all.
I like that nickname too, Cheeto.
That's nice. Actually my nickname as well is Cheeto.
Hey,
anybody in my family, if you know me, they call me Cheeto.
Are you hot Cheeto or just regular Cheeto?
Nah, just Cheeto. All right, man. That's gonna wrap it up for this week's podcast for us. Again, we're on all streaming platforms as far as audio goes. Catch us on iTunes, Spotify, Pocket Cast. Anywhere you get audio podcasts, you can pretty much catch us on. We're also going to be uploading to YouTube every week. So, man, keep subscribing, keep liking, keep sharing. We appreciate all that. Any final words here? I think we got a consensus pick to come up. Ben, you want to let us know?
We're gonna try and get our first. I know it didn't go our way the first week, but as a podcast, we're gonna go with the consensus pick, and we're gonna go with a fight that's happening on Wednesday on the fight night, and we're gonna take Drew Dober as a -120 favorite to beat Alexander Hernandez. So that'll be the consensus pick for the We Talking About Sports podcast for week 2. Let's try and get this dub, get to 1-1. Y'all keep the comments coming. We're going to bring them up on the podcast. It's just always more points, more talking points. We'll give you the answers to y'all's questions. Appreciate all the support, man. Everybody that's sharing, liking, retweeting, all that stuff. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Roland, what's up?
Yeah, no, thank you guys again. We made it back for a 4th week. Throw up the 4s one more time before we exit. But yeah, comment, subscribe. Definitely love all the YouTube comments and Twitter comments that are coming in. As Ben alluded to, it gives us stuff to talk about, and that's what we want to do here. We want to be as interactionary as possible with our viewing audience. So if you guys have something you want to hear talk about and you think it's interesting, put it in the comments and we'll talk about it. We'll find a way to break it in.
Yeah. And like we said before, we're not always right, and you might disagree.
Correct.
Let us know. We want to know.
Yeah.
Also, the Pick'em contest, we got those 2 cards. So if you didn't get in for the first week, I know a couple of people told us, man, we forgot last minute. Justin's the leader with 7. 7 isn't too big of a lead. Take some underdogs. You'll pick up 2 points in a fight. So it's still not too late. Join us. However you pick your fights, whether it's the best beard, the best tattoos, the baldest, shiniest head, whatever the hell it is. Just join in on the fun.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Later.
I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. I mean, listen, we talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice. Not a game, not a game.
Me. Bam, bam. Me, man.
Not a game.